Hey everyone, my name is Kevin Owocki. I am the founder of Gitcoin, and my presentation today is about the future of Gitcoin and how we're going multi-mechanism. So I've just shared my screen, and I'm going to take you through a quick deck which talks about that trajectory and how we got on it and what it means for where Gitcoin is going in the future. So basically, what I'm going to tell you is how we started with Quadratic Funding, which is a mechanism which is very good at funding communities based off of what everyday community members think. And I'm going to talk about how I think the future of public goods funding and regeneration of DAOs is multi-mechanism and how Gitcoin is pursuing that in the future. So for those of you who are not familiar with Gitcoin, here's a little bit about us. We run Gitcoin Grants, which is a quarterly grants round that supports public goods, open source software, and other initiatives in the Ethereum community. Over the last 20 quarterly rounds, which is about 6 years, we've generated about 4 million unique donations to about 4,000 different projects and generated $60,000 towards public goods in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm very happy to count some of the most talented people in the ecosystem and projects in the ecosystem as users of Gitcoin Grants, first raising money on Gitcoin Grants back in the 2019 and 2020 cycle. And now many of these projects have figured out that grants equals growth for their own ecosystem. And so they're using Gitcoin Grants in order to build their own ecosystems from there. So it's been a lot of fun to work with some of the top projects in the Ethereum ecosystem and help power their growth. The way that we have done that is through our flagship product, Gitcoin Grants, which is based off of a mechanism called Quadratic Funding. Quadratic Funding was invented by Zoe Hitzig, Glenn Weil, and Vitalik Buterin. And it's basically a capital allocation mechanism that is very democratic and is good at getting small donors and large donors to get together and fund things. So basically the way Quadratic Funding works is that you set out a matching pool, and then projects are able to apply to be a part of that matching pool. And then everyday contributors, when they contribute to those projects, will get their contributions matched by the matching pool. But it'll be based more on the number of donors to those projects as opposed to the amount that they've been giving. So basically a really powerful way of doing democratic capital allocation in the Ethereum ecosystem. And I think that it's an amazing tool, but it's got some dependencies which add some complexity because the amount of funding is given to projects that have the broadest base of support. We need to have what's called Sybil resistance. So basically making sure that people are not making up identities when they're contributing on Gitcoin Grants, and doing that in a privacy preserving way that prevents Sybil attacks, sock puppet account attacks, is quite a challenge, and it adds a little bit of complexity to Quadratic Funding. Another attack vector of Quadratic Funding is collusion. Collusion is basically, hey, I'll give you $1 if you contribute to my project. And collusion is a thing that can mess up Quadratic Funding rounds. So basically Gitcoin came to prominence thanks to Quadratic Funding, and we've been running 20 rounds over the last 6 years in order to support projects in the Ethereum ecosystem. And I like to think that we're using these rounds as learning experiences where we can navigate the search space of what is the best possible mechanism design for creating a Quadratic Funding capital allocation ecosystem. And we've learned a lot over the last 20 rounds of Quadratic Funding, adding features like that now come standard in Quadratic Funding apps, things like match estimates, things like the ability to check out in a cart, are things that we've added over time. And that's how we've generated 4 million unique donations with Quadratic Funding. But we have discovered over the last couple of years that the future is multi-mechanism. So if you think about the search space of trying to find the best possible capital allocation mechanism in order to distribute funding to Ethereum communities and DAOs that are using Gitcoin Grants, I think the search space is fundamentally has many local maximas to it. So we, when we were doing Quadratic Funding rounds, we're just looking for the local maxima of what's possible with Quadratic Funding. But I actually think that there's many other elegant ways of doing capital allocation in Web3. And I want to just say mad respect to Optimism and Retroactive Public Goods Funding, really good at retroactively rewarding contributors. I think that I've also, because Quadratic Funding can be kind of complex, gained a new reverence for simplicity. Just giving out direct grants very simply on chain, I think, is a really great way to reward innovative projects that are working on the public good in these ecosystems. So I have discovered over the last couple of years that this search space will not just have one winner, one optimal design. It is a plurality-based search space, and we're going to see lots of different local maximas of different capital allocation mechanisms. I'm going to spend the rest of my talk just kind of going through what some of those are. So direct grants, I think that if grants funding mechanisms were ice cream flavors, then direct grants would be vanilla. It's the most plain, it's the most simple. But simplicity, we shouldn't overlook simplicity, because simplicity is power. It's the ability to just send projects money based off of their application and what is in their application. And I think that many grants programs will be built on top of direct grants and optimizations on top of direct grants. Retroactive public goods funding, I think, is something that Optimism has pioneered, and I'm just really, really proud of the Optimism community for putting retroactive funding on the map. And I think it's really a profound insight that it's easier to fund public goods with the benefit of hindsight than it is to know ahead of time what's going to have value. So basically, it's easier to say what was good as opposed to what might be good in the future. And retroactive funding, I think, is really something that has been proven out over the last year or two by the Optimism ecosystem. And Gitcoin has been doing some retroactive funding rounds with projects like Pocket and Cello and Filecoin and libp2p, and we're really excited to take what Optimism has pioneered and to build it into other ecosystems. Another mechanism that I'm really excited about right now and is being built in and around the Gitcoin ecosystem by our friends at OneHive is conviction voting. So basically, this is a tool that's very good at bottoms-up decision-making within a DAO. Basically, proposals become objects that you can stake your governance tokens on within the context of a DAO's funding infrastructure with conviction voting. And so basically, conviction voting is a way of demonstrating your conviction in what projects you want to see funded by staking tokens on those different projects. And the conviction charges up over time. The more longer you stake your tokens, the more money can be pulled out of the treasury by those projects. And so really excited to see what happens with conviction voting as OneHive and Allo protocol are able to make it available to everyday members of the Web3 ecosystem. Okay, so again, just to zoom back out, Gitcoin Grants is now becoming multi-mechanism, and we're playing with all of these other different mechanisms that we think are complementary to Quadratic Funding. And the next one that I want to talk about that I'm really excited about is self-curated registries. So basically, Protocol Guild is the biggest example of this right now. And what Protocol Guild is a list of people who are working on Ethereum layer 1 public goods on the actual protocol. And basically, it's a list of Protocol Guild members that curate who's else also on the list. And then from there, what they do is they go out to DAOs and increasingly to hedge funds that are launching on Ethereum and saying, hey, why don't you fund the people that are building the base layer of this network that you love? And this really works well at bottoms-up curation and definition of important domains when there are clear domain definitions. Protocol Guild is for protocol developers. And I think that we're still going to see how this scales, but Protocol Guild is the most successful self-curating registry that exists out there. And I think that people have been flirting with ideas of forking Protocol Guild and building other types of guilds out there. And I'm excited to see how that works in the future. Let's see, how much time do I have? I guess I could talk about maybe one or two other mechanisms, and then I can start heading towards the end of my presentation. The next one that I want to talk about is this thing called Grantships, which is a project built by the DAO Masons. Shout out DAO Masons if you're listening to this talk. Basically, Grantships is a meta grant funding mechanism. Basically, what it is instead of saying, hey, we want our grants program to be retro PGF or quadratic funding or conviction voting or assurance contracts or any of these other things, with Grantships, basically what you can say is I'm going to let any of these mechanisms be fair game, and I'm going to allow different ships to apply to access funding from the treasury and deploy it according to their own methodology with their own product. And I think that what we're looking at here is basically grant programs that have a meta allocation framework, and they're allocating to QF, direct grants, retroactive funding, all at once. And so Grantship is like a meta allocation framework in which you allow DAO governance to decide what happens with the grants programs, and it puts plurality at the base layer of your DAO using Grantship. So for those of you that are sort of reading between the lines, I'm just really excited about the endless possibilities that I see for new capital allocation strategies to exist on top of blockchains. We can now program our values into our money, and so we can build crypto economic systems that represent our value. And wow, that's just so profound. I think that as tokenization eats the world, the TAM, the total available market for on-chain capital allocation, becomes massive. Trillions of dollars will be spent on capital allocation in the future through capital allocation tools. And capital allocation is really a very simple thing in our everyday lives. It's how do we decide to spend money on things? When you pay bills, you're allocating capital. When you go to EDCON and you pay a taxi cab on the way over, that is capital allocation. But at scale, capital allocation becomes mirrored by gatekeeping and intermediaries that causes it not to be precise. For grant-giving organizations and for NGOs and governments, capital allocation is a full-time job. And now that we can have trustless, programmable, precise, and scalable capital allocation on chain, I think the world is our oyster in terms of funding what matters, for-profit and non-profit across the world. And so I'm just really excited about the endless possibilities for capital allocation. The ones that I showed you right now are quadratic funding and conviction voting and retro funding, but I think that it follows that anything that is capital allocation in the future could be reinvented by blockchains, because blockchains change the way we move money around the world. So there's a bunch of other future mechanisms that I hope to see be built in and around the Gitcoin ecosystem and in Ethereum, and I'm here for it. We're gonna do more scalable, precise capital allocation than has ever been possible before by bringing these primitives on chain. Gitcoin's current offerings, if you're out there and you're trying to build growth for your Web3 community, we offer direct grants, which is basically just like a simple grant giving program that you can put your grants on chain and basically send tokens to projects that are doing valuable work in your ecosystem. Usually this is where ecosystems will start when they want to start allocating capital. Of course, we offer quadratic funding to any DAO that wants to distribute tokens based off of the number of community supporters that actually support that project. Quadratic funding is really good at democratic capital allocation. Gitcoin offers quadratic funding out of the box so that you and your DAO can do quadratic funding, fund what matters in your ecosystem, and build an ecosystem of contributors around your DAO. So we've done this for Ethereum, we've done it for Zuzalo, we've done it for a handful of other projects, and really excited to give more democratic capital allocation tools out to the people, which will help them fund what matters to them. Of course, retroactive funding is taking off right now. Big shout out to our friends at Optimism that have basically, we've worked with them on their voting interface, and now they're allowing us to offer it to other people in the ecosystem. Retroactive funding is really very powerful for giving funds to a project after the completion of a goal and based off of badge holder opinions. And one of the things I really love about retroactive funding is just how much heat there is there and how much there's people discovering best practices. It feels like the early days of quadratic funding in 2019 and 2020 feels like that for retro funding right now. So we offer all three of these things. If you want to do funding what matters in your ecosystem, then please reach out to me, or hit up Gitcoin.co and you can sign up for a grant program, and we can help give you a checkup for the best practices for your grants ecosystem. And then I'll close my talk by just talking about this book that I've written and have started distributing over the last month or so. I actually launched it at ETHCC, and it's called the Onchain Capital Allocation Handbook. Let me just unblur this for you right here. Okay, so On-Chain Capital Allocation Handbook. And basically the idea here is that there's this really rich design space of what's possible for on-chain capital allocation. And my goal with this book was to help people discover this emerging frontier of on-chain coordination and capital allocation that we're gonna be doing in Web3. And I am not a mechanism maximalist. My job in this book was to talk about the 30-something mechanisms that I discovered: quadratic funding, retro funding, conviction voting, Grantships, assurance contracts, honor, rotational voting systems, bonding curves, gnosis safe, like that there's 30 different mechanisms that are available to help your community fund what matters to it. And I'm just so excited about cartographing the design space and making it available to everyday members of the community. I think that, as the founder of Gitcoin, I maybe have access to a lot of these ideas and the throughput of knowledge that is contained in the sheer power and brilliance of the Ethereum community. I wanted to make sure that that access is democratized and that everyone else can see what I see with respect to this domain. So allobook.gitcoin.co, you can download a PDF of the book, but the art is pretty great, and I would recommend that you get a print copy of the book. You can get that for I think $30 United States. That's just basically our printing costs. And I put a lot of work into making this dry domain of mechanism design that typically appears in academic papers and giving it a little bit of zazz and visualizing the sort of life and biology that I see when I see these on-chain capital allocation networks, the things that they allow people to do. And so, yeah, it's worth picking up if you're into any of these ideas. So I'd say check out Gitcoin if you are interested in funding what matters in your ecosystem. And you can pick up the book at allobook.gitcoin.co if you're interested in learning more. And my email is kevin@gitcoin.co. If you have any questions about this presentation, the future, past, or present of Gitcoin, then please hit me up. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak at EDCON. I really wish I could be there IRL. I went to EDCON a couple times ago, and I think it's a really great community, and I hope to be invited in the future. So thanks so much for the time, and let me know if you want to do any Q&As, and if not, I guess I'll hop off from here. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks very much. Let's give a big hand to Kevin. Kevin is available for some questions, he said. Kevin, can you still hear us?
Yeah, I can still hear you. I can't see anything there.
Okay.
But I can hear you.
All right. Yes, let's see. How do we do this? Does anybody have any questions? どなたかご質問のある方、もしいらっしゃれば。All right, we have a gentleman at the first row. Or can you maybe come here and you can ask your question here? Okay.
Hey, Kevin. Thanks for the speech. It's very inspiring to always hear about how Gitcoin can help developers and ecosystem that want to fund them. Is there any plan to allow, let's say, Gitcoin fundees or funders to help each other, like instead of just like two ways? So do you have like funders help fund projects help projects or ecosystem help ecosystems? Is there any plan on that?
Thanks for the question. I couldn't exactly make out all of it. Would you mind repeating it, or with someone with a mic, could you repeat it?
Yeah, so the question is, it's good to know that ecosystems can fund a project through Gitcoin, right? What about, is there any efforts that you plan to have projects help each other who are being funded by Gitcoin, like using this power of network in a Gitcoin?
Yeah. Well, so, part of our vision is to enable every DAO to fund what matters to it. And I think that what I see emerging, hopefully over time, is a DAO of DAOs, where basically people participate in Gitcoin rounds and they earn GTC. People contribute to optimism rounds and they earn OP. And for every token and DAO under the sun, I think there's sort of a plurality of ways that we can all work for each other and exchange tokens with each other. And so I hope projects will be not only funders, but fundees, and play on both sides of the coin there. But there's probably more we can do there. Email me at kevin@gitcoin.co if you have specific ideas, and happy to chat more.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions? Looks like everyone has had a long evening last night. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. EDCON is great, and I hope that you all have a great time.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
All right, bye.
Bye.